The 25 Most Amazing Paintings by Édouard Manet. Number 25. Portrait of Stéphane Mallarmé, 1876. In 1876, during the last quarter of the 19th century, Édouard Manet painted one of his most intimate and revealing portraits, that of Stéphane Mallarmé. This work not only captures the physical figure of the symbolist poet, but also conveys his reflective spirit and connection to the literary and artistic movement of the time. Mallarmé, known for his innovative and abstract approach to poetry, became a central figure of modernity, and Manet, with his unique ability to depict character and atmosphere, immortalized him in a portrait that stands out for its sobriety and balance. In the historical context, the relationship between artists and literary figures in Paris at that time was vibrant, reflecting the cultural richness that characterized the city as the epicenter of European art. Manet employed a restrained palette in this portrait, with dark tones contrasting subtly with the lighter details in the poet's face and hands. The background, devoid of ornamental elements, focuses all attention on Mallarmé, whose serene expression and direct gaze convey both introspection and closeness. This minimalist and austere approach departs from the conventional techniques of academic portraiture of the day, demonstrating Manet's preference for exploring the possibilities of modern art and his ability to redefine artistic norms. In Manet's career, this portrait is significant for its ability to merge the worlds of literature and painting. By choosing Mallarmé as his subject, Manet also established a dialogue between the two disciplines, highlighting how visual art can complement and enrich literature. Furthermore, the portrait marked a period in which the artist sought to simplify his style, focusing on the essential in order to convey the soul of his subjects. This approach positioned him as a precursor to Impressionism, although he himself never fully identified with that movement. A fascinating detail of this portrait is how Manet manages to capture Mallarmé's emotional complexity with such economy of resources. The quick, decisive strokes on the suit contrast with the meticulousness of the face, evidencing the painter's skill in balancing the spontaneous with the deliberate. This portrait is not only a technical masterpiece, but also a testament to the bond between two great figures of late 19th century French culture. Number 24. Luncheon in the Studio, 1868. In 1868, Édouard Manet presented Luncheon in the Studio, a work that, although seemingly simple, encapsulates many of the characteristics that defined his style and innovative approach to modern art. This painting, created during the transition between realism and the first expressions of Impressionism, reflects the tension between tradition and modernity that Manet explored throughout his career. Set in a bourgeois domestic space, the painting shows a formally dressed young man sitting in front of a table with the remains of a luncheon, while a secondary figure in the background adds depth and complexity to the composition. The composition of this work is notable for its geometric construction and innovative use of light. Manet plays with the contrast between the dark colors of the young man's suit and the softer, warmer tones of the objects on the table. This balance of light and shadow creates an intimate, contemplative atmosphere that invites the viewer to interpret the narrative implicit in the scene. The apparent simplicity of the painting hides the complexity of its execution, from the choice of objects to the arrangement of the figures, who seem alien but deeply connected in the shared space. In the context of Manet's career, Luncheon in the Studio is a work that reflects his interest in modern life and his ability to capture everyday moments with an innovative approach. This painting is also notable for its ability to combine traditional influences, such as Flemish painting, with an approach that foreshadows Impressionism. The choice of a bourgeois setting reflects Manet's fascination with contemporary urban life and his desire to portray people and spaces as they were, without embellishment or idealization. A striking detail is the indifferent attitude of the young protagonist, whose distant gaze adds an air of mystery to the scene. This detail, together with the seemingly random arrangement of objects on the table, has led numerous critics to interpret the work as a reflection on isolation and disconnection in modern life. Thus, Lunch in the Studio is not only a visual masterpiece, but also a subtle commentary on the social transformations of the late 19th century. Number 23. The tragic actor Rouvière as Hamlet. 1866. In 1866, Édouard Manet immortalized the tragic actor Philibert Rouvière in his portrayal of Hamlet, an iconic character of Shakespearean theater. This portrait, known as the tragic actor Rouvière as Hamlet, stands out for its ability to capture the emotional intensity of the character and the psychological complexity that Rouvière brought to his performance. Set in 19th century Paris, this work reflects both Manet's fascination with the theater and his ability to depict the humanity of his subjects, transcending mere physical appearance. The technique used by Manet in this portrait is an example of his mastery of free brushwork and his ability to play with light and shadow. The dark background highlights the central figure, creating a theatrical effect reminiscent of Caravaggio's Baroque portraits, but with a modern approach. Rouvière's facial expression, combined with his dramatic posture, conveys the tragic essence of Hamlet, a character tormented by existential and emotional dilemmas. Manet thus manages to capture not only the actor, but also the character he plays, merging reality and fiction in a single image. For Manet, this portrait marked an important moment in his career, as it allowed him to explore themes that went beyond the traditional boundaries of portraiture. By choosing Rouvière as his subject, the artist not only paid homage to the theater, but also ventured into more emotional and subjective terrain, which enriched his artistic approach. Furthermore, this work reflects his interest in human emotions and his ability to convey them through his brush, consolidating him as one of the great innovators of his time. A fascinating detail about this painting is the way Manet manages to capture the intensity of the character with an economy of visual elements. The absence of a detailed setting focuses all attention on the actor, while the nuances in facial expression and posture add a psychological depth that remains captivating more than a century after its creation. Number 22. The Boy with Cherries. 1859. In 1859, Édouard Manet created The Boy with Cherries, a work noted for its apparent simplicity and emotionality. This portrait, which features a young boy holding a bunch of cherries, is an early example of Manet's distinctive style, characterized by his interest in everyday life and his ability to find beauty in the simplest details. Set in a time when European art was dominated by academicism, this painting shows Manet's willingness to explore new forms of expression and to capture intimate moments with a unique freshness. The composition of the painting is simple but effective, with the child placed in the center and a dark background highlighting his figure. Manet employs a limited palette, dominated by warm, earthy tones, which creates a welcoming and natural atmosphere. The cherries, painted in a vibrant red, contrast with the more neutral tones of the rest of the composition, drawing the viewer's eye to the child's gesture. This detail not only adds a touch of color, but also symbolizes the transience of childhood and innocence. Boy with Cherries is a significant work in Manet's career, as it shows his ability to combine traditional techniques with a more modern and personal approach. In this portrait, the artist moves away from academic conventions by focusing on a humble subject and adopting a more direct and less idealized style. This choice reflects his interest in depicting reality as it is, without embellishment or artifice, which positioned him as a precursor of the Impressionist movement. An interesting detail in this painting is the child's expression, which seems to mix curiosity and shyness. This emotional nuance, captured with masterful delicacy, adds a human dimension to the work and demonstrates Manet's ability to connect with his models and transmit their essence through art. Number 21. The Absinthe Drinker, 1859. In 1859, Édouard Manet presented The Absinthe Drinker, one of his first significant works and an early example of his break with the artistic norms of his time. This painting, which depicts a man seated with a bottle of absinthe on a table, reflects Manet's fascination with urban themes and the marginal characters who populated the streets of Paris during the 19th century. At a time when art focused on idealizing reality, Manet chose to portray it with a raw, direct honesty that defied the expectations of the public and critics. The composition of the work is simple yet powerful, with the man placed at the center and an austere background highlighting his figure. Manet uses a restrained palette, dominated by dark, muted tones that reflect the subject's melancholy and isolation. The bottle of absinthe, placed prominently on the table, acts as a symbol of the excesses and struggles of modern life, while the man's serious, thoughtful expression suggests a personal story of struggle and resignation. In the context of Manet's career, The Absinthe Drinker is a work that marks the beginning of his commitment to the representation of contemporary reality. Although it was criticized at the time for its unconventional approach and its subject matter considered inappropriate, this painting is now seen as a precursor to realism and modernism in art. The choice of such an everyday subject and its innovative execution established Manet as an artist willing to challenge norms and explore new expressive possibilities. A notable detail of this work is the way Manet manages to convey the subject's solitude and introspection with so few elements. The man's relaxed posture, combined with the simplicity of the surroundings, creates an atmosphere that is both intimate and universal, inviting the viewer to reflect on the human condition and the complexities of urban life in the 19th century. Number 20. Plums, 1877. In 1877, Édouard Manet created Plums, a work that reflects the artist's ability to capture intimate scenes with a quality that goes beyond the everyday. The historical context of the late 19th century, marked by industrial advances and social changes in France, influenced the choice of subjects that evoked both the common and the poetic. In this work, a solitary woman is seen, absorbed, while holding a plum. This simple, common and mundane object becomes a symbol of stillness and reflection, highlighting Manet's ability to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary. Manet employs a sparse but effective palette, where dark, neutral tones contrast with the light falling on the female figure. His loose brushstroke technique and calculated precision give the canvas a rich texture, allowing the viewer to contemplate not only the scene depicted, but also the materiality of the painting itself. This combination of detail and spontaneity is a distinctive characteristic of Manet, and is best expressed in Plums. This work also marks a crucial moment in Manet's career, as he had already left behind the initial controversies of his career to establish himself as a key figure in the art world. Although Plums is not as famous as other pieces, it represents a testimony to his stylistic evolution towards a synthesis between realism and impressionist influences. An interesting detail about Plums is its ability to invite the viewer to a meditative pause. Beyond the female figure and the fruit she holds, the work challenges us to contemplate the subtlety of everyday life and to find in it a beauty that often goes unnoticed. Number 19. The Café-Concert, 1879. In 1879, Édouard Manet painted the café-concert, a work that encapsulates the vibrant atmosphere of entertainment venues in 19th-century France. During this period, cafés concerts had become meeting places for artists, intellectuals, and the bourgeoisie, reflecting the cultural effervescence of Paris. Known for his masterful documenting of modern life, Manet captures in this painting not only a scene, but also a sense of immediacy and energy. The composition is notable for its dynamic structure, where the characters are arranged in planes that intertwine thanks to the play of light and shadow. The warm colors of the interior lights contrast with the darker tones of the background, creating an enveloping effect. Manet uses quick, loose brushstrokes to evoke the movement and vitality of the place, avoiding excessive detail to maintain a sense of spontaneity and realism. This work also highlights Manet's interest in human interactions and everyday gestures. In the café-concert, the characters seem absorbed in their own conversations and activities, inviting the viewer to immerse themselves in the scene and explore the social dynamics depicted. This focus on modern urban life places him as a precursor to Impressionism, although he always maintained his unique artistic identity. One of the fascinating things about the café-concert is how it manages to convey the essence of a specific place and a historical moment, making us part of the cultural experience of the time. Manet doesn't just document, he transforms every detail into art. Number 18. In the Orangery, 1879. Created in 1879, In the Orangery is a work that reflects Édouard Manet's sensitivity to capturing intimate moments in carefully selected settings. In this painting, Manet transports his viewers into the interior of an orangery, a space that in the 19th century symbolized the rise of modernity and interest in controlled nature. The work shows a couple, seemingly oblivious to the viewer, engaged in a private conversation. The attention to detail in this painting is remarkable. Green tones dominate the scene, evoking the lushness of the foliage and contrasting with the neutral colors of the characters' clothing. Manet uses quick brushstrokes to suggest the texture of the plants and the glass of the greenhouse, creating an atmosphere of freshness and luminosity. This combination of technique and composition highlights his ability to capture both the environment and the psychology of his characters. In the context of Manet's career, In the Greenhouse represents a consolidation of his exploration of modern and intimate scenes. Here, he not only focuses on human interaction, but also on how the environment acts as a frame that defines and enriches the visual narrative. This work is a perfect example of how Manet balanced realism with an almost poetic sensibility. An intriguing aspect of the greenhouse is its ability to evoke questions. What are the characters saying to each other? What is their relationship? Manet leaves these questions open, inviting the viewer to actively participate in the interpretation of the work. Number 17. The Monet family in their garden at Argenteuil, 1874. In 1874, Édouard Manet painted the Monet family in their garden at Argenteuil, a work that celebrates the relationship between two of the greatest artists of the 19th century. Argenteuil, a small town just outside Paris, was known as a haven for the Impressionists, and here Manet captures a scene of serenity and family harmony. The painting is notable for its use of light and color, elements that Manet masterfully manipulates to create a warm and welcoming atmosphere. The green tones of the garden are combined with the whites and blues of the clothing, reflecting the calm of a sunny day. The loose brushstrokes and balanced composition show the influence of the Impressionists, although Manet always maintained his stylistic individuality. This work is not only a testament to the friendship between Manet and Monet, but also to their mutual admiration. By portraying the Monet family, Manet pays homage to domestic life and the link between art and nature. It is a celebration of the everyday elevated through painting. A fascinating detail is how Manet incorporates small elements that bring the scene to life, such as the flowers dotting the garden or the relaxed expressions of the characters. It is a reminder that beauty can be found in the simplest of moments. Number 16. The Battle of the Kearsarge and the Alabama, 1864. In 1864, during the context of the American Civil War, Édouard Manet painted the Battle of the Kearsarge and the Alabama, a work that addresses a rare historical subject in his career. The painting depicts the naval engagement between the USS Kearsarge and the CSS Alabama, an event that took place off the coast of Cherbourg, France. This episode captured Manet's imagination, who immortalized it with a visual intensity that reflects the brutality of the conflict. The composition of the work is dynamic and dramatic. Manet uses broad brushstrokes to depict the rough waves and the smoke from the cannons, creating a sense of constant movement. The ships, despite their size, look almost fragile against the immensity of the sea, a metaphor for the chaos of war. The dark color palette and contrasts of light accentuate the tension of the scene. Historically, this work stands out as one of Manet's few forays into war themes. Best known for his urban scenes and portraits, the Battle of the Kearsarge and the Alabama demonstrates his ability to adapt to different genres while maintaining his unmistakable style. This canvas is a testament to his interest in contemporary events and his ability to capture their essence with energetic brushstrokes. An interesting aspect is how Manet transforms a military event into a work of art that transcends time. Through his brush, the artist not only documents, but also invites the viewer to reflect on the consequences of human conflict. Number 15. In the Boat, 1874. In 1874, Édouard Manet presented a work that captured the serenity and beauty of the bourgeois leisure of his time, In the Boat. This painting, created during the height of Impressionism, marks a crucial point in Manet's transition to a lighter, more luminous style, influenced by his interaction with contemporaries such as Claude Monet and Pierre-Auguste Renoir. The historical context of this painting places us in a France that was beginning to enjoy the benefits of industrial progress, with trains and steamboats facilitating access to landscapes that had previously seemed unattainable. The 19th century, particularly in its second half, offered artists such as Manet the opportunity to portray a world in transformation. The technique used in the Boat is distinguished by the freshness of its brushstrokes and the masterful use of light to bring the water and sky to life. Manet captured the tranquility of the River Seine with a vibrant palette, paying special attention to the reflections in the water and the texture of the fabrics worn by the figures. The contrast between warm and cool tones, characteristic of his work, generates a sense of depth and naturalness, transporting the viewer into the scene. In addition, the compositional balance between the boat, the water, and the sky shows a technical skill that contrasts with his intention to maintain the spontaneity of the initial impression of the moment. Within the scope of Manet's career, this work reflects his evolution towards lighter subject matter, moving away from the controversies of his early paintings such as the Luncheon on the Grass. However, it does not neglect his ability to innovate, as it introduces elements of modernity into its depiction of leisure, a theme that resonated deeply within Parisian society. The inclusion of characters dressed in contemporary clothing reinforces this connection to the present, making the work as relevant to its time as it is to art history at large. As a curious fact, In the Boat was created during Manet's vacation in Argenteuil, a place frequented by Impressionist artists. Although Manet never considered himself fully part of this movement, His relationship with them left an indelible mark on his style. The painting captures not only a specific moment in time, but also the spirit of a century that navigated between tradition and innovation. Number 14. Nana, 1877. The painting Nana, created in 1877, is one of Édouard Manet's most provocative works. Set in 19th century Paris, this work captures the rise of the bourgeoisie and the complex social relations of the time. Paris, then known as the City of Light, was a hotbed of modernity, fashion, and cultural transformation. In this context, Manet not only reflected everyday life, but also challenged prevailing social and artistic norms. Nana shows a young woman, presumably a courtesan, in front of a mirror while a man watches from the background. Manet employed a direct approach, breaking with the idealization of female figures in academic art. The soft but revealing light highlights the details of her blue satin dress and pale skin, while the dark background focuses the viewer's attention on the protagonist. Manet's loose, expressive brushwork gives the work dynamism, breaking with academic conventions and anticipating modern aesthetics. In Manet's career, Nana symbolizes his interest in portraying the modern woman, freed from traditional social and artistic restrictions. Although the work was initially rejected from the official salon due to its controversial content, it became one of the most talked about pieces of its time, underlining Manet's ability to fuse art and provocation. It is interesting to note that Nana also served as an inspiration for literature, particularly in Émile Zola's novel of the same name. This relationship between art and literature shows Manet's impact on his time, crossing disciplinary boundaries and establishing himself as an essential figure of modernity. Number 13. The Dead Bullfighter, 1864. In 1864, Édouard Manet presented The Dead Bullfighter, a work that reflects both his fascination with bullfighting and his commitment to innovative aesthetics. Created during a period when bullfighting fascinated the Parisian public, this painting explores the drama of a tragic event. Set in the 19th century, when costume-brist and exotic themes captivated the public, this work contrasts with the heroic ideals of academic painting, offering instead a raw and direct vision of reality. Manet opted for a simple but striking composition, focusing attention on the inert body of the bullfighter. The vigorous brushwork and the restrained color palette, dominated by dark and earthy tones, intensify the somber atmosphere of the scene. The contrast between the rigidity of the body and the delicacy of the bullfighter's costume, with its gold embroidery, adds a level of visual complexity that reinforces the emotional impact. This work marked a turning point in Manet's career, as he often defied the expectations of both the public and critics. By focusing on such a controversial subject as death in the ring, Manet not only broke with the conventions of historical painting, but also addressed the fragility of human life, a theme that would resonate in his later work. Interestingly, The Dead Bullfighter was one of Manet's first works to receive strong negative reviews, but it also helped cement his reputation as an innovator. Although bullfighting was a foreign tradition, Manet used it to explore universal themes such as bravery, tragedy, and humanity. Number 12. Portrait of Émile Zola, 1868. Completed in 1868, Portrait of Émile Zola is a tribute by Édouard Manet to one of his closest friends and most passionate supporters. In this painting, Manet captures the essence of the French writer, known for his leadership in the naturalist movement. The 19th century, particularly in its second half, witnessed a unique symbiosis between literature and painting, and this work represents an exceptional confluence of both disciplines. The composition of the portrait is simple but full of meaning. Zola is shown seated, surrounded by books, papers, and a small reproduction of the Olympia, one of Manet's most controversial works. These elements not only reinforce the connection between the two artists, but also underline Zola's role as a defender of modernity in art. The color palette, dominated by dark tones, contrasts with the flashes of light that illuminate the writer's face and the surrounding objects, showing Manet's technical mastery. In Manet's career, this portrait stands out as a testament to gratitude towards Zola, who defended Manet against critics who branded him a provocateur. Furthermore, the painting reflects Manet's commitment to psychological portraiture, capturing not only the physical appearance but also the personality and intellect of his sitter. A notable detail is the contrast between Zola's relaxed posture and the intensity of his gaze, which gives the viewer an intimate insight into his character. This work not only celebrates the friendship between two cultural giants, but also serves as a visual document of a key period in the history of art and literature. Number 11. The Old Musician, 1862. In 1862, Édouard Manet created one of his most enigmatic and complex works, The Old Musician. This painting, set in 19th century Paris, captures the spirit of an era marked by industrialization and social change. The work shows a group of marginalized characters, led by an elderly violinist, in a desolate landscape that contrasts with the bustling modernity of the city. Technically, The Old Musician is notable for its pyramidal composition, which draws attention to the central musician while the supporting characters are arranged around him, each with a unique expression. Manet employed a palette of dark, earthy tones to reinforce the melancholic tone of the scene, while his loose brushwork gives the work a dynamism that anticipates Impressionism. In Manet's career, this painting reflects his interest in depicting social reality, moving away from the historical or mythological themes that dominated academic art. The choice of anonymous and marginal figures as protagonists underlines his commitment to a more honest and democratic vision of art. A fascinating aspect of The Old Musician is its ability to evoke multiple interpretations, from a reflection on the human condition to a commentary on social exclusion. The presence of the violinist, whose figure seems inspired by classical portraits, adds a historical dimension that connects the past with the present, making this work a fundamental piece in the development of modern art. Number 10. Berthe Morisot with a Bunch of Violets, 1872. In 1872, in the context of the social and cultural changes that marked the 19th century, Édouard Manet painted one of his most representative works, Berthe Morisot with a Bunch of Violets. The work captures the figure of Berthe Morisot, a painter and close friend of the artist, who became one of the main exponents of the Impressionist movement. In this portrait, Manet highlights not only the character of the model, but also her elegance and sensitivity, elements that resonate with the artistic ideals of the time. Berthe Morisot appears with an introspective look, adorned with a small bunch of violets, a recurring symbol of delicacy and femininity in 19th century art. Manet's technique shows his transition to a looser style, with visible brushstrokes that lend texture and vitality to the work. The dark background contrasts with the luminosity of Morisot's face, creating a dramatic effect that accentuates her expression. This balance between detail and spontaneity reflects the painter's ability to capture both the individuality of the sitter and the intimate atmosphere of the scene. The deliberately simple composition allows attention to be focused on Morisot's face and hands, emphasizing her presence as the absolute protagonist of the canvas. In Manet's career, this portrait marks a key moment in his exploration of the relationship between realism and impressionism. The depiction of Berthe Morisot not only celebrates their friendship, but also her talent as an artist, at a time when women faced numerous barriers in the art world. This implicit dialogue between painter and model enriches the interpretation of the work, giving it an additional dimension that transcends the mere portrait. As an interesting fact, this painting was praised by critics for its ability to convey an emotional connection between the viewer and the figure depicted. Berthe Morisot with a bunch of violets is not only a testament to Manet's technical mastery, but also a tribute to a woman who left an indelible mark on the history of art. Number 9. The Spanish Singer, 1860. In 1860, Édouard Manet created The Spanish Singer, a work that reflects his interest in folklore and foreign traditions, particularly those of Spain. In this oil on canvas, Manet depicts a singer dressed in traditional costume, holding a guitar in a relaxed attitude, while his face seems to capture the energy and charm of popular expressions of the 19th century. This work evidences the influence of Romanticism and the fascination with exotic themes that were popular in Europe during this period. The painting is notable for its detailed depiction of the character's costume, with rich colors and marked contrasts that highlight the liveliness of the scene. The texture of the fabric, the folds of the clothing, and the details of the instrument show the technical skill of Manet, who, despite his interest in innovation, retained a respect for pictorial tradition. At the same time, the dark and simple background allows the figure of the singer to take absolute prominence, eliminating distractions and directing all attention to his presence. This work was key in Manet's career, as it marked a turning point in his style, moving away from rigid academic formality and adopting a more dynamic and expressive approach. In addition, The Spanish Singer was well received in its time, being exhibited at the prestigious Paris Salon, where it was acclaimed for its freshness and originality. The work helped position Manet as an innovator who knew how to balance tradition and modernity. Interestingly, The Spanish Singer was one of the first works in which Manet experimented with everyday subjects, anticipating the principles of Impressionism. This interest in the mundane, combined with a masterful technical approach, established him as one of the great painters of the 19th century. Number 8. Music at the Tuileries, 1862. In 1862, Édouard Manet presented one of his first explorations of modern life with the work Music at the Tuileries. This painting portrays a lively social scene in the Tuileries Gardens in Paris, where the cultural and political elites of the time would gather to enjoy open-air concerts. With quick, vibrant brushstrokes, Manet captures the bustling, cosmopolitan atmosphere of the 19th century, moving away from the traditional approaches of academic painting. The composition is deliberately disordered, with superimposed figures integrating into a dynamic cityscape. This fragmented and spontaneous approach challenged the artistic norms of its time, laying the groundwork for the development of Impressionism. Among the attendees depicted, notable figures from Manet's intellectual circle can be identified, including the poet Charles Baudelaire and the painter Henri Fantin-Latour, making the work a visual document of Parisian cultural life at the time. The color palette is bright and varied, highlighting the contrasts between the dark tones of the costumes and the luminous details of the feminine dresses and foliage. The loose brushstrokes and lack of a central focal point were interpreted as a bold representation of modernity, capturing not only the physical appearance, but also the spirit of the times. In art history, Music at the Tuileries is considered a seminal work, as it introduced a revolutionary approach to depicting human interaction in an urban context. It also reflects Manet's fascination with the theater of everyday life, which would later become a recurring theme in his work. Number 7. The Railway. 1873. The painting, The Railway, created by Édouard Manet in 1873, is a reflection of the impact of industrialization on 19th-century urban life. The painting depicts a young woman sitting next to a little girl in an environment marked by the smoke and structures of a railway in Paris. This contrast between the human and the industrial highlights Manet's ability to capture the duality of modernity. The composition is simple but deeply symbolic. The young woman, holding a book, seems oblivious to the bustle of the train, while the little girl gazes curiously at the industrial landscape. This dichotomy reflects the conflict between tradition and progress that defined the second half of the 19th century. Manet uses a soft color palette and balanced lighting to create a melancholic atmosphere that invites reflection. This work represents a significant shift in Manet's career, as it shows his transition to a more introspective and emotional style. The Railway was initially criticized for its lack of clear narrative, but has since been recognized as a milestone in the artistic representation of contemporary life. Interestingly, this painting combines the intimate and the monumental, offering a unique insight into the social and technological changes of its time. Number 6. The Balcony. From 1868 to 1869. Between 1868 and 1869, Édouard Manet created The Balcony, a work notable for its unique composition and innovative approach. Inspired by Francisco de Goya's The Majas on the Balcony, this painting depicts three figures on a balcony, framed by a wrought iron railing. The Spanish influence is evident, but Manet manages to reinterpret the subject with a fresh, modern approach. The figures, including Berthe Morisot, appear to be lost in thought, creating an atmosphere of mystery and ambiguity. The choice of colors, vibrant greens, crisp whites and deep blacks, creates a visual contrast that highlights the figures' shapes and details. The composition, with its geometric lines and use of negative space, demonstrates Manet's technical mastery. The Balcony was controversial due to its apparent simplicity and lack of a clear narrative theme. However, this work marked a turning point in 19th-century art, challenging academic conventions and paving the way for Impressionism. This painting, with its balance between tradition and innovation, is a testament to Manet's artistic vision, who constantly sought to redefine the boundaries of art. Number 5. The Fife. 1866. In 1866 AD, Édouard Manet's The Fife shocked audiences with its simplicity and modernity. Inspired by his admiration for Spanish art, this work depicts a young military musician playing a fife, dressed in a vibrant uniform that contrasts with the nearly empty, uniform background. This minimalist approach allowed Manet to focus all attention on the figure, eliminating any distractions from the surroundings. The painting, executed with precise brushstrokes and flat colors, reflects the influence of Japanese prints, which were gaining popularity in Europe at the time. The absence of shadows and the simplicity of the composition create a sense of timelessness, making the young musician a universal symbol rather than an individual portrait. Although initially rejected by the Paris Salon, the fifer has become one of Manet's most iconic works, notable for its boldness and modernity. This piece marked a turning point in his career, cementing his reputation as an innovator who challenged the conventions of academic art. A fascinating fact about this work is how Manet, by stripping it of a narrative context, manages to make the viewer concentrate solely on the presence of the musician, highlighting the purity of the figure and the technical skill of the artist. Number 4. The Execution of Emperor Maximilian. From 1867 to 1868. Between 1867 and 1868 AD, Édouard Manet tackled one of the most controversial historical themes of his time with his work, The Execution of the Emperor Maximilian. Inspired by newspaper accounts and engravings of the time, Manet documented the tragic end of Emperor Maximilian of Mexico, executed in Querétaro after the failure of his brief reign supported by Napoleon III. The painting depicts the moment of the execution, with Maximilian flanked by two generals. The scene is charged with drama, with an almost cinematic treatment that places the viewer as an eyewitness. Manet uses dark colors and bold brushstrokes to emphasize the tension of the moment, while the precisely detailed uniforms of the French soldiers underline France's political involvement in the event. This work, censored at the time due to its implicit criticism of Napoleon III, is a testament to Manet's engagement with the events of his time. Although it was not publicly exhibited until years after its creation, it has become one of the most studied pieces for its ability to combine documentary realism with a unique emotional charge. A curiosity about this painting is that Manet made several versions of the scene, reflecting his obsession with capturing the intensity of the event and the importance he gave it as a historical subject. Number 3. A Bar at the Folies Bergère, 1882. In the 19th century, during the year 1882 AD, Édouard Manet presented his last great work, A Bar at the Folies Bergère. This painting, considered one of the peaks of his career, masterfully captures the vibrant and decadent atmosphere of Parisian cabarets, while offering a profound reflection on loneliness and isolation in the midst of the crowd. The work shows a waitress behind a counter, her gaze lost, while behind her the hustle and bustle of the famous cabaret is reflected. The composition is full of carefully studied details, from the champagne bottles arranged on the counter to the distorted reflection in the mirror, which introduces a unique visual complexity. Manet uses a rich palette of warm and cool tones, creating a balance between the opulence of the surroundings and the melancholy of the central figure. A Bar at the Folies Bergère represents the culmination of Manet's technique, which combines realism with a deep symbolic charge. The work has been interpreted as a metaphor for alienation in modern society, where the waitress, despite being surrounded by luxury and activity, seems trapped in her inner world. The most intriguing detail is the reflection in the mirror, which seems to defy the laws of traditional perspective. This device, whether deliberate or not, has been the subject of countless debates among critics and art scholars, further increasing the appeal of this enigmatic painting. Number 2. The Luncheon on the Grass, 1863. In 1863 AD, Édouard Manet's The Luncheon on the Grass became another of his most controversial works. This painting, created in the middle of the 19th century, broke artistic molds by presenting a female nude in a contemporary setting, something that at the time was considered almost sacrilegious. Inspired by Renaissance works such as The Country Concert by Giorgione and Titian, Manet reinterpreted the scene from a modern perspective, eliminating any allegorical or mythological references. The composition shows two men dressed in contemporary clothing chatting casually, while a completely naked woman accompanies them. In the background, a second female figure, dressed, bathes in a stream. The contrast between the realism of the female body and the almost surreal landscape, with quick and schematic brushstrokes, gives the work a sense of ambiguity that disconcerted the audience. The green and brown tones of the surroundings deliberately frame the figures, further highlighting their disconnection. This painting was rejected by the official salon and exhibited at the Salon des Rejectés, where it received strong criticism and ridicule. However, its innovation lies in its ability to challenge the norms of academic art, proposing a new dialogue between tradition and modernity. In historical terms, the Luncheon on the Grass marked the beginning of an artistic movement that would later be known as Impressionism, influencing artists such as Monet and Renoir. The curious thing about this work is how Manet, far from seeking controversy, used classical elements to challenge the viewer's perception, forcing him to question what he considered acceptable in art. Number 1. Olympia, 1863. In the context of the 19th century, during the year 1863 AD, Édouard Manet presented to the world his masterpiece, Olympia, a painting that redefined the standards of academic art. In an era where conventions ruled painting, Manet dared to break with the norms, introducing raw realism and shocking modernity. Inspired by the traditions of Renaissance Venuses, this work, however, strips away the characteristic idealism to present a real woman, aware of her power and her direct gaze, something that baffled the public of her time. Technically, Olympia is an oil-on-canvas painting notable for the simplicity of its composition, with a dark background contrasting with the pale skin of the central figure. The model, Victorine Meurent, lies reclining on a bed, covered only by a white cloth and a bouquet of flowers, while a black cat looms at the foot of the bed. Every detail, from Olympia's defiant expression to the inclusion of the maid in the background, underscores Manet's defiance of traditional canons. His use of quick brushstrokes and visible textures adds a sense of immediacy and realism to the work. This painting marked a turning point in Manet's career, establishing him as one of the pioneers of modern art. The scandal it provoked at its exhibition at the Paris Salon only reinforced his reputation as a revolutionary artist. The work not only challenged the conventions of its time, but also profoundly influenced later generations of Impressionist and Modernist artists, becoming an emblem of artistic audacity. As a final detail, it is worth mentioning that Olympia was a direct response to classical works such as Titian's Venus of Urbino. However, while the Renaissance Venus embodies a romantic idealization, Manet presents a figure that takes ownership of her reality, offering a powerful and modern representation of femininity. Thank you for watching our video. Subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. Give it a like, comment your thoughts, and share this video with your friends and family.